Thank you, Kent, and thank you, choir. If there are children ages 4 through 3rd grade who have not already begun to make their way, they are invited to be in worship and wonder together with Reverend Kelly. It is good to be together with you here in this place as we continue in our current series, exploring the short stories of Jesus that we might know better as parables. This is the 3rd week in our time together. We have 2 more to come. We're grateful for the journey thus far and look forward to the journey ahead. Would you join with me now in a word of prayer? Now may the words of my mouth and the meditations of each heart be found acceptable in your sight, God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Do you remember, or perhaps do you still even use, the Choose Your Own Adventure books? Are those still a thing? Yes, good. I used to love these books as a child. You remember how they work. You read a few pages of narrative and then you're confronted with a choice, a fork in the road, a decision to be made. And depending on how you choose, you turn ahead in the book to page 12 or you flip ahead in the book to page 16. Depending on how you choose in that moment affects how the rest of the narrative unfolds. My favorite Choose Your Own Adventure book featured a curious otter going about his day in the forest glade. Hunting for fish in a babbling brook, you were rewarded with a full belly and a nap. Hunt for fish near the industrial plant, and you spent the rest of the afternoon with a bellyache. Spend your time building shelter or tending a nest, you were rewarded with a secure, restful night. Spend your time sliding gleefully down the muddy riverbank, you were spotted by a predator and placed in peril. The books were enjoyable because they allowed for interactive storyline, the experience of diverse choices, and a participatory part in the story's outcome. Instead of the author telling you how the story progressed and ended, the reader became partner with the author in a mutual back and forth that moved toward an agreed-upon ending together. Parables are certainly not choose-your-own adventure tales, but they invite us to consider the story differently depending on several decisions we make together. One of our first major considerations involves who we identify with when hearing the parable. Where do we see ourselves in the story? Or more important, perhaps, where would the original hearers of the story have seen themselves therein? There was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen, and who feasted sumptuously every day. And at his gate lay a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who longed to satisfy his hunger with what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs would come and lick his sores. All humility aside, if given the choice, we immediately gravitate to the rich man's situation. Would you rather wear fine linens, hued in expensive purple dye, identified with royalty? Or would you rather wear rags and sores? Would you rather feast sumptuously, not just on occasion, on birthdays or anniversaries, but every day? Or would you rather long for scraps, crumbs that fell from the table? This is a safe space to be honest, right? And pretend, if you do, that you don't know the rest of Lazarus' story. If I'm being honest, I'd rather be the rich man, Who doesn't dream not of financial security, but financial excess? Who doesn't fantasize about what one would do after winning the Powerball lottery? Who doesn't now and then picture themselves rubbing elbows with Hollywood stars or globetrotting the world? I can't be the only one, right? No one fantasizes or dreams about Lazarus' fate. Penniless, hungry, open sores. Some commentators picture the dogs as Lazarus' only comfort, not even a human companion by his side. Others picture the dogs as waiting for Lazarus to die, his sores their appetizer for the meal to come. If we too easily let ourselves off the hook by saying, well, I'm wealthy, I'm financially secure, but I'm not the 1% at the top, the parable surely doesn't mean me. Or on the other end, well, I give to the poor, I put $1 in the coffee cup, I volunteer at the soup kitchen. The parable does not allow us to escape so easily. The poor man died and was carried away by the angels to be with Abraham. The rich man also died and was buried. In Hades, where he was being tormented, he looked up and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side. He called out, "Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am in agony in these flames." Once we have identified with the rich man, the parable immediately flips our expectations end over end. We might even hear the echoes of those other parables. The last shall be first, and the first shall be last. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. And at this point, our temptation is a detached judgment of the rich man and approval of his eternal fate. Well, good, we might declare. Another might chime in. The rich man got what he had coming. Another might affirm. The rich man got his just deserts. No pun intended. Someone else piles on. Serves him right. Just look at the rich man's behavior. Not only does he ignore impoverished Lazarus at his gate, even in death he's trying to call the shots, directing Abraham to order Lazarus to do his bidding. Send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue. In the rich man's eyes, Lazarus is a non-person in life, still his servant in death. But Abraham said, "Child, remember that during your lifetime you received your good things, and Lazarus in like manner evil things. But now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. Besides all this, between you and us a great chasm has been fixed, so that those who might want to pass from here to you cannot do so, and no one can cross from there to us." In life, the rich man looked down while Lazarus looked up. In this picture of eternity, it is Lazarus who looks down and the rich man who looks up. And at this point, the sermon should preach itself. Choose your own adventure. Give generously to the poor and live eternity in paradise, or turn a blind eye to the poor at your gate and burn in eternal torment. For effect, we could even pass the offering tray again. Lest you withheld the first time. I hope that 3 sermons into the series we are cautious to assign the parable such quick, simple, straightforward meaning. If this parable is about an embodied afterlife, pearly gates, and eternal torment, is this really the design of a loving God? Can the faithful or the generous or the poor, those receiving this heavenly reward, reunited with their Creator in death, truly enjoy an eternity staring across an impassable chasm at their fellow humanity in agony and torment? Where is the graceful God I know, the compassionate Christ I follow, the merciful Spirit that sustains? Is this what justice looks like in God's eyes? Or does the story bear some of the human fingerprints of revenge and vengeance? I would argue that this is not an accurate vision of what reunion with our Creator looks like. Rich man or Lazarus, sinner or saint, unbeliever or believer. Maybe this is one pathway of the parable, not to paint a literal picture, but to prolong our continued wrestling and wondering and stretching. He said, "Then, Father, I beg you to send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, that he may warn them, so that they may not also come into this place of torment." Abraham replied, "They have Moses and the prophets, they should listen to them." He said, "No, Father Abraham, but if someone goes to them from the dead, they will repent." He said to him, "If they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, neither will they be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead." Well then, preacher, if this parable isn't about the afterlife, eternity, Abraham's bosom and impassable chasms, what is it about? Could it be about the economic expectations, the financial lifestyle of people of faith? This, after all, is a top concern and priority for the gospel writer of Luke and Acts. From the humble financial beginnings of Jesus' birth to the communal sharing of the early Jesus movement in the book of Acts, money and possessions are a central theme. Could it be that God calls us to invite Lazarus to a seat at the table instead of offering crumbs and dregs and leftovers? I can remember those canned goods drives growing up in the church, my mom sending me to the pantry to select items to bring to the church. What did I choose? Not my coveted SpaghettiOs, not the 6-pack of red Gatorade, but the artichoke hearts I couldn't stomach, the dusty can of beets my brother and I refused. What threads do I offer to the clothing ministry? Well, certainly not my Patagonia or my Brooks Brothers. Some still with tags, some I'll maybe wear someday. But the worn thin shirts and jeans with the stain I won't wear, those will do. Beggars can't be choosers, right? Do I schedule intentional time in service or offer when it's convenient? In these moments, I think of a story I've shared before. It's burned in my memory. A family cleaning out their deep freezer around Thanksgiving found a rock-solid butterball turkey covered in a layer of thick frost nestled at the bottom of the bin. Judging by their memory and the layer of frost, now they guesstimated that the turkey must have been 10 or 15, maybe even 20 years old. Now, faithful people that they were, and not wanting to waste, they located the customer service hotline on the rear label and called Butterball to ask if the turkey could still be safely consumed. And after some consultation, the representative said it would be in the family's best interest to throw the turkey away. Well, that's okay, they responded. We'll just donate it to the local food bank. And off they went. If we choose this adventure, it could be both fitting and faithful, but it is also perhaps rooted in fear and guilt. I hope we respond to places of need out of our love for God, not our fear of damnation or our crippling anxiety-producing guilt. No solution to a circumstance rooted in fear is a faithful, sustainable one. Another path, perhaps. Could the adventure we choose become not about quantity or frequency or quality of giving, but about relationship, about vision, about seeing the invisible? The moment of recognition in the parable comes not by hearing Lazarus, not by bumping into him, not by smelling his stench, but seeing him. Only too late. In Hades, where he was being tormented, he looked up and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side. What was invisible outside his gate has now become visible. The rich man's problem is not his wealth, but perhaps his indifference. The British artist Luc Jerome once highlighted the invisibility of poverty in a series of glass sculpture installations in various places throughout the UK. This life-size glass sleeping figure was made as part of an Arts Council-funded residency at the Glass Hub in the UK. The artwork was made to highlight the growing number of hidden and invisible homeless people there are now. Shrouded in a glass blanket, the ghost-like figure, which has no gender, is a vulnerable and fragile form. In the artist's words, for every person you see sleeping on the streets, there are many others sleeping in hostels and squats and other forms of unsatisfactory and insecure accommodation. I was interested to see whether the sculpture would be ignored and treated like street furniture, as homeless people often are in a city. I hope the artwork will raise awareness of the problem and that the public will feel moved to support the charity, to make a difference. Which path will we choose? Which adventure will we chase? Is this parable about the sweet by and by, or the urgent here and now? Is the parable about wealth or vision? What does this parable say about God? Thanks be to God this day.